It's interesting actually talking to you, because I think our approaches are actually quite different, because I can't eat anything.
Okay.
And immediately, as soon as I do, I mean, maybe I can get away with a banana or two.
Okay.
But it has to almost be, my stomach has to be empty.
Okay. Yeah.
But then later on, it's just during the race. I mean, it's not even a race for me, because I just plod along, because I just enjoy the run. But you're running so much quicker. But then it's, during the run is then when I'm thinking I need some nutrition, need some fuel to help me through.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Do you use anything during?
Yeah. So during the longer distances, I would have like energy gels, or kind of like little cubes, like shot blocks that you can have. It's kind of like a sweet, but it's got a bit of carb in. Have some of those sometimes. But mainly, if I'm doing a marathon, I would have maybe 4 gels. Okay. And I've worked out, for me, if I have anything over 4, then that's tend to be when my tummy starts to feel a bit funny.
Because it's just glucose, I imagine it. So it's just sugar pretty much going straight into your system.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you must space them out at specific times?
I try and do it every kind of 45 to 50 minutes. But I wouldn't even say I've mastered that at the moment. I mean, that's what works for me. But I do, throughout my training, I am constantly trying to find out what works optimally for me. And I do sometimes change it. But if I'm going to try things, I always do it in a training run. So if it goes wrong, then at least it's in training rather than on the day. I would tend to have 4 gels, and sometimes maybe near the end I might have a caffeine gel as well.
I was just about to ask you about that. See if that's something that also sort of perks you up a bit, or gives you that extra bit of energy. It's obviously a different type of energy, maybe. Yeah,
but I've definitely found that helps near the end. Just gives you a bit of alertness when you need it. And also with kind of nutrition whilst all the gels when you are doing events is don't wait until you really need it. You need to be having these, even when you feel I don't necessarily need it, but that's when you need to have it. Because if you get to the point where you're kind of desperate, because that's happened in the past, probably that Basingstoke run actually, where there were kind of kids handing out jelly babies, and you're just reaching out for everything because you're just like, I need energy. But at that point, it's probably too late really to get the boost from it. You need to be having these before you get to that point.
That's interesting. So actually, you should be kind of planning, like you said, 45-minute bits. But in that first 45 minutes, you probably don't really feel like you need anything. But what you're suggesting is that actually you need to keep yourself, I think it's your glycogen levels, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right.
So you need to keep that topped up so you don't kind of just hit empty.
Yeah.
Because then you're never going to get back to where you need to be. So it's interesting, actually, you should be planning it earlier.
Yeah, definitely. So really there's a lot of prep that goes into it. But going back to where you say, you struggle to run after having any breakfast, maybe that's what your body's adapted to. That's what you've got used to.
It might be. I struggle to digest.
Yeah.
So if I have a big breakfast, or I always have quite a small breakfast. So normally whenever I train fasted, just because it's first thing in the morning. I think you're right. That's where my body's adapted. I don't think it's the same for everyone. Yeah. But I'd certainly, because I normally get up, then get out and run straight away, and I do it just on a coffee or two. That's when I feel like I'm at my best. I'll probably have breakfast after. But of course, if you're doing an actual arranged marathon or ultra, then it's much later in the day.
Yeah.
So then you're talking about, going out to run at maybe 10. And then for me, then you've got a 4 to 5 hour run. So you might not eat till, early afternoon. And by then you've burnt how many thousand calories?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it is a tricky one to get right, I think.
Yeah. And it's a very personal thing. So, I can advise on quite a lot of things, but actually that might not work for you. But you've just got to try it in your training and find out what works best. For you it might be a case where actually the day before you just eat a bit more, so you've got that fuel in you already for the early morning run, and then actually you just find whilst you're out running, like you say, you can just top yourself up with a bit of food whilst you're out. But some people will say, look, I just can't eat at all whilst I'm running. I just can't have anything. So they need to get their energy in kind of beforehand.
So after New York, you had Stockholm.
So Stockholm was before New York,
Oh, sorry.
then New York.
Okay.
I've never done London. I'd really love to do
wow.
London. And then I think it was Manchester, which up until this year, Manchester was my personal best. So I did 3:23. So I did quite a big jump from 3:36 to 3:23.
Wow, that is a big difference.
Yeah.
So why do you think there was a big difference there?
Once again, just better prep, better training. I'd learnt a bit from each of those marathons, and it just clicked. That day really clicked. I got to 20 miles and I felt exactly the same as I did at the beginning of the run. So I was still feeling good, got to 20. And I thought, blimey, okay, well, I've got 10K to go. Let's see if I can push on a bit, try and actually run a bit quicker. So I managed to do that for another 2 or 3 miles, got to 23, had increased the pace, not dramatically, but a little bit. And then it was only that last 2 or 3 that became a struggle rather than the kind of 10K. So I got quite a big PB there. And then like I say, this year I managed to do 3:21, just over 3:21. So that's my most recent PB. But that was quite. I've had quite a few years gap between doing that actually. So there'd been some other events that I'd done, Edinburgh, and a couple of others where I hadn't quite got back to that level. But this year I trained really hard.
So what did that training consist of? So when because now we're talking about an optimal performance.
Yeah. So
that in the weeks and months leading up to it, how did you prepare?
So real simple technique really was I started to just do more mileage really. So went from maybe running 3-4 times a week. I increased that to 5 to 6. So less rest days. So obviously when you're starting to do that, there's a bit more chance of getting injuries because you're not having so much rest. But if you can start to do that and get that consistent running in, once again, training, it's all about consistency. So if you can start to run 5-6 times a week, your body just adapts to doing that. And so in the past, maybe where I've done 30 miles a week, 35 miles a week, I kind of got up to kind of the 50s, and I think my highest week was over 62 miles in a week, which is a lot of mileage.
That's a lot of miles.
Yeah, when you're working and you've got a family and stuff, so it's hard, and that's it's getting that balance right as well. But that was I would say the biggest thing was getting in more mileage.
And what are those runs each day?
So they vary. And that's where, again, once the training's probably changed from what I used to do. So I would generally do a couple of kind of interval sessions during the week.
Okay, that's interesting because I was for some reason my mind was immediately going to you're running an hour, then an hour and a half, then 2 hours. But we're actually there's probably some interval stuff in there as well. So you're doing different types of running each day.
Yeah, definitely. So that's also a big thing, is varying the training that you're doing. So you've got to have some very easy runs, so literally where you're just kind of plodding away really. You can chat, so if someone was with you, you'd be chatting away, not even really thinking about the run, and that's where majority of your training actually needs to be like that actually. But then I do intervals, so that could involve speed work, maybe a track session. So in Basingstoke, we've got the Downgrange Athletics track, which anyone can kind of use currently. So you can just turn up, and as long as there's no kind of training evenings going on. So I might do intervals of kind of 800 metres or 400s, and then also some hill reps, getting hill reps in. That's quite a good kind of interval session, where you might do like a minute uphill and then you jog down slowly or walk slowly, and then you do another minute up, maybe do that 8 to 10 times. So yes, that kind of training is important.
That feels like it's going to be the hardest.
Yeah,
to me.
yeah, those are the tough sessions, but they're the ones that really help if you're going to make the difference. If you're someone that wants to improve your time, that's what's going to help, is those interval runs or the hill runs. Definitely.
I suppose when you're looking at some of these marathons, do you approach them thinking, today I'm after a certain time? Because if you are and you want to get surely you're going to be more inclined to go, actually I know this is a flatter course, because if you've got quite a hilly course, then that's obviously it's going to be far more difficult to get anything as a PB from it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think a lot of the events I have chosen is I've kind of looked at the route and thought, oh, okay, actually that's a good one for a personal best. So you have to definitely bear the route in mind when you choose it. But then at the same time, for me, actually, sometimes I find if it's completely flat, it's a bit more relentless because there's no real respite. You're running fast kind of throughout. Whereas actually with a hilly course, you've got the hills, but actually on the downhill, it means you can run quite quickly, but it's not actually taking so much energy out of you because your momentum just kind of takes you. So for me, I actually find like a slightly undulating course might actually help.
And mentally, would that be better for you almost as well, because you've got the variation? Because a lot of this is keeping your mind.
Yeah. Because it can get quite boring if it's just constantly, or if it's a route that's maybe 3 or 4 laps, you're just doing the same thing again and again. That can get quite boring. And so I tend to prefer routes that are like a big loop, rather than laps kind of thing. So. So there's lots. With running, there's lots of variables really, and it all depends what your goal is. I have had some events that I've gone and done, and actually I just want to go and enjoy it, or I might have someone that I want to run with and maybe help them get a good time, or it does kind of vary. And then obviously if we're going to talk about ultras slightly as well. It's kind of a different mentally for ultra marathons. It's not about pace at all or speed. It's more about, okay, I've got to find a tactic that's going to keep me going for the whole duration of the event. Whether it's whether it's just over marathon distance, or if it's kind of like 100-miler. I've got clients of mine that do 100-mile races, which is a long way.
That's unbelievable. So let's talk about the jump between doing the marathons and then getting into ultra.
Mm-hmm.
What sort of distance have you done in the ultras, and then kind of how do you then get past the point of, you've done your 26 miles, then you think I might have another 10 miles to go? I mean, it's
kind of daunting thinking, cause
it's scary to think about it.
Because more often than not, you get to the end of a marathon and you're absolutely exhausted.
Yeah.
So the thought of having to do more is, it's hard. But like I say, it's a completely different mindset with the ultras. You might find that you do like a run walk kind of tactic. So you might decide, okay, well I'm going to run for 10 minutes, then walk for 5. And some people do that right from the start. Others think, okay, well I'll get a certain distance under my belt, and then I'll start to do that kind of thing. But you've just got to slow your pace right down. And once again, you feel so good at the beginning that the temptation is to run a lot quicker at the beginning. But if you do that, you're going to pay for it later on.